The land explored by our ancestors extends from Altai to the White Sea. The scientific expedition Trails of Nomads continues to unveil the path of our forefathers. A group of scientists, led by pilgrim of the 21st century Sapari Skak, has already visited more than 50 countries. Scientists reveal the exciting secrets of the past. Watch an amazing story of a great journey in the Trails of Nomads program. What century is the most ancient mention of the highest peak of Kazakhstan, Khan-Tengri? What information about the Himalayas, the largest mountain system of the earth, did Abai give? Do you know about a Kazakh who climbed Mount Everest twice? For the Turks who carved their history in stone, mountains have a special meaning. Ancient legends told us about this. In one of the legends, taken from the Chinese chronicles, it is said that the distant great-grandfather of the Turks came out of the caves of one of the mountains. In the writings of Abil Ghazi and Kandemir, documentary information confirms this assumption. There is a historical reason for why the citizen of the world, Sapari Skak, climbed to the highest peaks of the mountains. The Turks consider themselves immigrants from the Altai Mountains. Therefore, they believe that the mountains is a holy place. In their opinion, the god Tengri lives on the mountain. One of the peaks conquered by the 21st century pilgrim Sapari Skak is Khan-Tengri on Tengri Mountain. The height of the peak is 7,000 meters. It is the highest peak not only in Kazakhstan but in the entire northern hemisphere. It is located on the border of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and China. If you go back to ancient times, then this peak was the Olympus of the Turks. The name itself speaks for itself. The concept Khan and Tanir come from the most ancient times. The meaning of the words is common and understandable for all modern Turkic peoples, the descendants of the Kok Turks. The Kok Turks called the Tengri Mountain the Mountain of God or the Mountain of the Sky. It was considered the most sacred mountain. Kok Turks climbed Mount Tengri to worship God. The traditions of worship have survived even now. Khan-Tengri is also popularly called Kanditao, or Bloody Mountain, because the peak, which looks like a pyramid, turns into a bright red bloody color during the evening sunset. Sometimes it resembles tongues of flame. On a foggy day, one can witness amazing pictures. The mountain looks like an erupting volcano. Watching it is a special pleasure. In 2009, we also visited this peak. When you find yourself alone with the mountain, you seem to be talking to it. That is the exact feeling. Here a person seems to realize that he should not live only for himself, but should do something for the sake of his country, to protect nature. This is where a deep understanding of all these things comes in. The information about this sacred mountain full of secrets is found in the Chinese chronicles written 1200 years ago. The first studies here were carried out in 1856-1857 by the Russian geographer and traveler Pyotr Semyonov-Tenshansky. He described Khan-Tengri as follows. When we got to the top of the mountain pass at about 1 p.m., we were blinded by the unexpected sight. directly to our south, we noticed the most magnificent mountain range I have ever seen. It all, from top to bottom, consisted of snow giants. I could count at least 30 of them, to the right and left of me. The entire ridge, together with the intervals between the mountain peaks, was covered with an uninterrupted veil of eternal snow. In the middle of these giants, there was one snow-white pointed pyramid, which seemed from the height of the pass twice as high as the height of the other peaks. It was Khan-Tengri.
Тәңір тауының сондай бір қасиеті.
The Tengri Mountain has a striking feature. If it likes you, then it will let you to the top. That is, the road will open for you, and you will be able to climb Everest further. But if it does not like you, the mountain will not let you in. No matter how much you try, you will not be able to reach the peak. All these unique features of the mountain have been recorded by climbers. Here is what the mountaineer Kolokholnikov wrote. Only 100 meters are left to the peak, but I cannot climb.
Бірақ мен жете алмай-ақ қойдым дейді.
The highest peak is called the Bloody Mountain for another reason. It is not always conquered. Akin Kasim sang about the mountain in the following way. Khan-Tengri is gloomy and severe so that snow falls from it. Khan-Tengri emits blood from its foot. Khan-Tengri vowed to be inaccessible. Khan-Tengri will cripple you if you bicker. In fact, many people died on the way to the top of this mountain. After the expedition of Semyonov Tenshansky, scientists and climbers from different countries equipped expeditions to the mountain several times. However, until the 20th century, no one dared to reach the peak. Among all the expeditions to Khan-Tengri, the ascent of the German scientist, geographer, and climber Gottfried Merzbacher occupies a special place. He tried twice to reach the peak. The first time he went from the side of the Bayankol River and failed. The second time he reached the height of 5,500 meters and did not dare to go further. Looking at the formidable, frightening view of Khan-Tengri, Merzbacher thought and said that a man would never set foot on this place again. However, for a long time his cartographic drawings, elevation marks were used by other climbers. According to measurements and data from instruments of that time, the height of the Khan-Tengri peak was 7,120 meters.
Атақты альпинистердің біреуі
One of the famous climbers, Pogrebetsky, in 1931 laid a trail to Khan-Tengri from the south, explored the mountain and climbed the peak. Now it is a classic road to the top, and it has remained so in history. After the victorious ascent of the Ukrainian climber Mikhail Pogrebetsky in 1931, his result was repeated by the Kazakh climbers. In 1936, a group of Almaty climbers led by Yevgeny Kolokholnikov conquered Khan-Tengri from the western side. From that moment, the history of high-altitude mountaineering began in Kazakhstan, that is, climbing to a height of over 6,000 meters.
Ал енді 44 жылы, 46 жылы кезекті.
In 1944 and 1946, there were regular expeditions, and climbers conquered the second peak. Nobody conquered this peak before. After all, its height was 7,450 meters. For the first time, the climbers of the Soviet Union conquered the peak. This peak was later called Victory Peak.
Оның артынан жеңіс шыңы деп атады.
The world's best climbers are the great steppe people. They have always admired the grandeur and inaccessibility of mountain peaks. The mountain shooting base near Almaty, formed during the Second World War, played an important role in the formation of athletes. Its trainees fought heroically in battles in the Caucasian mountains. After the war, sports mountaineering was developed. Mountaineering camps and clubs began to appear in Kazakhstan.
В советские времена, там 60-е, там 80-е, 90-е, когда началась эра гималайских.
In Soviet times, that is, in 1960s, 80s, and 90s, the era of the Himalayan peaks began for the alpinists of the Union. At that time, Kazakhstan team was the backbone of Soviet mountaineering, because the strongest climbers came from Kazakhstan. Kazbek Waliev, Valery Krishchaty, Vladimir Smirnov. These athletes joined the elite of Soviet mountaineering.
Составляли элиту, можно сказать, советского альпинизма.
The heroic feat of Kazbek Waliev and Valery Krishchaty is worth noting. In 1982, for the first time in the history of Soviet mountaineering, they conquered the highest peak in the world, Everest. To mark this event, Kazbek Waliev installed a plate with the image of Almaty and Meadow at the peak. The authoritative path and glory of the older generation was repeated and multiplied by younger people. Today, Kazakhstan climbers are considered the best in the world. Climbers from other countries equal to Kazakhstan athletes and are waiting for them to conquer new peaks. After the Kazakhs, others are trying to follow their path. Famous Kazakh Maksut Jumayev is among the world's strongest climbers. This is a man of legend who twice conquered the highest peak in the world, Everest.
Начиная с 1997 года, когда Нурсултан Абишевич...
In 1997, Yelbasi Nursultan Nazarbayev personally presented the flag of our republic to the athlete climbers. From that moment on, our flag has appeared at the highest points of the planet, including Everest. And so my story, my path in sports began. This victory inspired me and my colleagues to reach new achievements for the benefit of our country.
Этим героическим поступком, и мне хотелось тоже стать и сделать что-то особенное для своей страны, для своей земли.
A new era of Kazakhstan mountaineering has begun in the new century. Our athletes decide to conquer 8,000ers. There are 14 such peaks in the world. They are located in the Himalayan and Karakoram mountains, on the territory of states such as China, Nepal, India, and Pakistan. Here is a list of these peaks: Chomolungma, Everest; Chogori, Kanchenjunga, Lhotse, Makalu, Choyo, Dalagiri, Manaslu, Nanga Parbat, Annapurna 1, Gusherbrum 1, Broad Peak, Gusherbrum 2, Shishapangma. Kazakhstan's youth team began implementing a program to conquer peaks of 8,000 meters in 2001 and successfully completed it in 2011. This heroic ascent of Kazakh athletes and the conquest of all 8,000-meter peaks of the world has taken a special place in the history of world mountaineering. For the first time, our climbers conquered all 14 peaks as a team. Moreover, our athletes did not use additional oxygen during the ascent.
Применение кислорода при восхождениях на 8000 метров это сравни как
During the conquest of an 8,000er, the use of supplemental oxygen is tantamount to the use of doping in sports. Kazakhstan athletes have never used supplemental oxygen, even in Soviet times. Because when climbers use oxygen, they don't show their athletic abilities. A person climbing Everest feels the effect of 7,000 meters more than that of 8,000 meters. Therefore, our climbers do not use such doping when climbing.
Поэтому и казахстанские альпинисты отрицали использование этого допинга.
Since 1970, there are a little more than 40 climbers who have conquered the 14 highest peaks in the world. Only half of them did not use oxygen devices at all during the ascent. Among these strongest climbers, there are 3 Kazakhs: Maksut Jumayev, Vasily Pivtsov, and Denis Urubko. The feat of Maksut Jumayev should be especially noted. He conquered Everest twice. In 2007, he climbed from the northern part of the mountain, and in 2018 from the southern side, which is considered the most dangerous. Thus, he is one of the few climbers who have reached the highest peak from both sides. You can count such athletes on one hand. Maksut Jumayev installed the Kazakhstan's flag at the world's highest point and sang the anthem.
алтын күн аспаны, алтындан даласы, ерліктің дастаны, еліне қарышы, ежелден ердеген даңқымыз шықты ғой, намысын бермеген қазағы мықты ғой.
The citizen of the world, Sapar Iskak, looked from a bird's-eye view at the Himalayan mountains, the peaks of which were conquered by climbers. In 2006, he traveled to Kathmandu and then flew over the highest peaks in the world by plane.
Біздің жағы Гималай тауларының үстінен ұшақпен ұшып өткендегі көрген.
When we flew over the Himalayan mountains, we saw the highest peaks of this mountain system: Everest, Annapurna, Kanchenjunga, Dhaulagiri, and Chauya.
Annapurna, Kanchenjunga, Dhaulagiri, және Chopalari.
The Himalayas, for Kazakhs, from the point of view of geography, are far away, but from the point of view of folklore, they are close. The historical work of the great thinker Abai, A Few Words About the Origin of the Kazakhs, has the following lines. Ahead the military campaign, Genghis Khan was gathering an army. As they say, most of these soldiers were Tatars, Kazakhs. The reason is that the Mongols are less hardy and worse than the Tatars in tolerating the lack of food and water, cold and heat. All Kazakhs fit for war were included in the army of Genghis Khan. They were ruled by the eldest son of Genghis Khan, Jochi. Earlier, having killed Kork Khan, they annexed the Uyghur, then moved into the interior of Asia. Since then, the Kazakhs have proverbs: in the year of the snake, movement; in the year of the horse, war; and in the year of the sheep, convergence. The road to Samarkand is wide, and the road to Bulanai is narrow. All these sayings tell about the conquests of Genghis Khan. Bulanai is most likely the Himalayas, possibly Mount Undukash. It was said about this mountain: there is no bigger mountain than Bulanai. There is no bigger beast than an elk.
Непалда, оның ішінде Гималайда біздің бабаларымыз да болған. Оған дәлел ретінде
Our ancestors were in Nepal, in the Himalayas. As evidence, we can say that in the period of Genghis Khan, then in the era of Kublai Khan, our ancestors were in Tibet. At first they went as the leaders of the army, some as warlords, then as economic managers, like governors or hakims of regions. Our ancestors remained there as hakims.
соларды басқаратын қазіргі уақытта мысалы губернатор дейді, облыстың әкімі дейді, сол сияқты әкім ретінде қалып қойған біздің бабаларымыз болды.
Talking about the peak of the Himalayas, Everest or Chomolungma, one should tell about the Sherpa people. Nepalese Sherpas are the ones who show the way to climbers. They live at the altitude of 5,000 meters above sea level. On May the 29th, 1953, the assistant to New Zealand's mountaineer explorer Edmund Hillary, a representative of the Sherpa people, Tenzing Norgay, ascended Everest for the first time in the history of mankind. Since then, they have been helping all climbers who are trying to climb the peaks. This is a source of income for the Sherpa people. However, they prefer not to climb on their own, so as not to disturb the abode of the gods. It is interesting that the Sherpa people as well as the Turks retained the system of tribal division. At the same time, there is also a similarity in traditions. It is also forbidden to marry the members of the same family, and they certainly pay kalim for the bride.
Орыс ғалымы Юрий Николаевич Рерих өзі, әйелі, балалары.
Russian scientist Yuri Rurik, together with his wife and children, were in the Himalayas for a long time and were engaged in research. We found a lot of animal-style items, and this is no coincidence. Indeed, even before the beginning of our era and later, the Turkic tribes were in Tibet. That time the ancestors crossed the Himalayan mountains to reach Nepal. They also lived in the Himalayas.
Гималай таулары арқылы өткен бер қарай Непалға Гималайдың тауларының арасында да өздері тұрған.
Sapari's Kak's trip to Nepal can certainly become the basis for creating a separate film. Our people associate mountains not only with height. It is a mysterious world, a sacred place full of unsolved secrets.